Welcome back to the channel. If you are new around here, my name is TJ Erickson, and today we're going to be talking about all my favorite walleye rod and reel setups that I use throughout the summer. So we're going to get started here, and I'm going to start with my lightest rod that I use, and this is a 6-foot medium light. 6-foot medium light, extra fast action. You know, a lot of guys are going to longer rods. A lot of people won't even use anything less than like 7 feet, but I really love this 6-foot rod. It is so incredibly sensitive, it is so incredibly light, and it is a great rod for a few specific purposes. And the main one that I use this for is drop shotting. You know, when you're drop shotting, you have your hook of some sort tied down, and then you have your drop shot weight just like that. And I really love this rod for drop shotting because it just has incredible sensitivity. And I actually pair this with a Piscifun Carbon X 1000. So I go down a little bit on this rod. For most of my rods, I use the Carbon X 2000, but for this one, since this rod is so light and so sensitive, I felt like the 2000 was just a little bit bulky for this rod. So when I went down to that 1000 size, it has just felt so nice in my hands. It's felt so light, so balanced. So this has been a great combination for some of these lighter, a little bit more finesse presentations, such as a drop shot. You know, sometimes you're pitching really small jigs and you're not getting out too far away from the boat. This is a great option for that as well. But this is by far my favorite drop shot rod, and I use this rod almost every single time I go out. I love this rod because it's got that nice soft tip with that extra fast action, and you can just feel every little bite that you're getting down there. So this is a great rod for drop shotting. A little bit smaller, a little bit shorter, a little bit lighter, but it is one of the lightest rods and one of the most sensitive rods that I've ever used. So anytime I can get my hands on this, I absolutely love to use it. And moving on to the same length rod, but just a little bit heavier, this is a 6-foot medium, and this rod is again by Rosemore Outdoor Gear, and I absolutely love this rod for my jig rod. I use this all the time for pitching jigs. You know, every once in a while, if I'm going to be pitching jigs a long ways, I will move up to a little bit longer rod, but for the majority of what I do, pitching 50, 60, 70 feet, this rod is perfect for it. That little bit shorter length gives you a little bit extra sensitivity, but then that medium power as opposed to the medium light gives you a little extra hook setting strength when you're using some of these jigs. It just lets you bury that hook a little bit deeper. You don't need quite as finesse of approach with that drop shot like you do, but this one gives you a little extra hook setting power, and it's just a great all-around rod for jigging, and that is the main thing that I use it for. This is also a great rod if you're doing any vertical jigging, especially if you're up on some of the bigger bodies of water, those fish are getting out a little bit deeper and you can drop down vertical. Both that 6-foot medium light and this 6-foot medium are great rods for just going right over the side of the boat and vertical jigging. That shorter length just helps you control things so much easier. And again, this is a rod that I use a lot also on the Rainy River when I'm just vertical jigging with some of those heavier jigs. That medium power just gives you a little more juice with some of those heavier jigs to work those. So that is another one of my rods that I use all the time. This is primarily my jigging rod, and it is a 6-foot medium from Rosemore Outdoor Gear. And this one I do pair with the Piscifun Carbon X 2000. I do like it with the 1000 size as well, but sometimes I feel like if I'm pitching out a little bit farther, it's nice to have that little bigger spool, that little beefier setup for this rod specifically. Now moving on to a little bit longer rod. This is a 7-foot medium light, and this one is probably the most versatile rod of all of these rods. This is the 7-foot medium light extra fast, and again, this is probably the best selling rod out of the Rosemore lineup, and it's for good reason because you can do almost anything with it. I love this rod for a lot of different things. I will use it early in the year, especially when I'm pitching out jigs a long ways away from the boat. This is a great rod to get a little extra length, a little extra whip to get those baits out farther from the boat, and not only that, but getting a little extra hook setting power when again those baits are far away from the boat. So I really like it for that. Another thing I really like using this rod for is just your standard Lindy rigging. It's great because it has that sensitivity in the tip and that give in the tip where you can feel those bites, and you can really give it some time to make sure they take it and they're not going to feel that pressure, that pull coming back on them. So it's a great rod for Lindy rigging, and I really like that. But one of the things that I probably use it for the most throughout the whole summer, and actually I have it tied on pretty much all the time, is for my jig and wrap rod. You know, the length of 7 foot and that medium light action just seems to be a perfect fit for ripping those baits specifically with braid. If I'm using mono, I will move up to that medium rod, that 7-foot medium that I'll talk about next. But when I'm using with braid, it has a good combination where I can loosen up the drag when I need to on my Piscifun Carbon X 2000, and I can just fight those fish because, again, like I've talked about in a couple of my videos, when you're using a jig and wrap, sometimes those fish can pop off very easily. So if you're not using mono to absorb those head shakes, so a lot of times being able to loosen up your drag is very helpful for that. So again, the 7-foot medium light, very versatile. You can use it for almost anything. And the reel that I use for this rod is my Piscifun Carbon X 2000. It's a great complement to this rod, especially like I said, when I'm using jigging wraps, because I can have the give in the rod that's absorbing some of those head shakes from the fish and loosen up the drag a little bit, so that way those jigging wrap hooks don't pop out. And I know there's a lot of tweaks you can do to these jigging wraps to make sure they don't pop out, but fact of the matter is I've used a lot of different things, and these baits, the way they strike them, a lot of times they don't have them hooked very good, and it's very easy to pop off. So it's helpful to minimize that by having a rod like this that has a lot of give but still has good backbone, and also having a reel with a phenomenal drag. So again, an awesome setup, very lightweight, very sensitive. This whole lineup of these rods and reels are all just incredibly light and sensitive. I get that from my clients all the time. They pick them up and they use them, and their first comment is usually, wow, this rod is so very light. And then once they actually start using it, I will hear, wow, I can feel everything down there. So they're just talking about the sensitivity of that. So again, probably the most versatile rod, but this one is the 7-foot medium light. And I'll put the names down for all these rods and where you can find them, and I'll have the links down in my description below for all these rods and all these reels. Moving on to the last rod that I use all the time, and this is again a 7-footer. This is a 7-foot medium, and this rod is an awesome rod for a variety of purposes. Early in the year I will use it for pitching ripping wraps, I'll use it for pitching crankbaits. It's got a little bit beefier action to it, still extra fast, but it's a little bit beefier action for pitching some of those baits that drag a little bit more. But what I use it for probably the most throughout the whole summer is a slip bobber rod. I love this as a slip bobber rod because it's got a combination of a good length but also a little bit beefier action. You can pitch these slip bobbers out, and then once the bobber goes down, you can reel down till you feel some weight, and the length combined with a little bit heavier action does a great job of being able to give a big sweeping hook set and just getting those hooks buried into that fish's mouth. So these are great rods. They're made of high quality parts. They have the Fuji reel seat, they have the stainless steel guides. Another thing that's super nice, and part of the reason why they are so sensitive, is you can see that the way that the handle is designed, it actually allows for you to touch the blank. You can see right here. So when you're having that rod, your hand is actually touching that blank, and it just adds that extra layer of sensitivity. And one of the times that that's come into play the most is when I'm first pitching out there. Sometimes I won't even have necessarily a tight line, it'll be a little bit of some slack in it even, and I can feel that fish bite as that bait is dropping, and that just shows what this sensitivity is like. Again, being able to have that all the way into that rod handle, being able to feel every little bit is just awesome. It just really adds to the sensitivity of these rods. And I'm gonna actually talk about one of my favorite features that's very kind of minor in the grand scheme of things, but it's one thing that I've absolutely loved, and that is, I don't know if you can see that very well, each of these rods have a different color thread. If you can't see that, I'll overlay some pictures here, some videos here, but each rod has a different layer or different color of thread, and that is awesome because when I'm reaching into my rod locker, I'm able to look and I'm able to identify which rods I want, which rods I need very quickly. You know, when I'm guiding, I'm handing people rods, or when I'm personally fishing and I'm trying to switch out presentations very quickly, being able to have that different color rod thread is just awesome to quickly identify. I know some guys will put tape on their rods, will do things like that to help identify either the line that they're using or the presentation that they use it for. But like I said, each rod having their own specific colored thread is very helpful for quickly identifying rods and being able to reach and switch out very quickly. And again, that's one of the things that's a little bit minor maybe in the grand scheme of things as far as how the action works and actually catching fish. But that has been one of the things that I noticed right away that I didn't think I was going to care about as much, but now is something that I don't know if I could do without. It just shows again how very thought out these rods are and how specific they are to each technique, and just the extra kind of time that Rosemore has put in making a good quality rod. And another thing that they designed these rods for is you see this front grip is very short, and that is so that way, you know, a lot of guys will like to have their index finger up on this part of the rod so that way they can get that just increased sensitivity as well. I don't do that quite as much, but I know a lot of guys do like to do that, so they added that on there as well to just have one more layer of sensitivity. And if you haven't been able to tell, these rods are very light and they're very sensitive, as I've said about 400 times in this video. And really the same thing with these reels. These reels are so light and they have such a smooth drag. It's just really a nice combination for some walleye rods. When I first started using these Piscifun reels, I was a little bit skeptical because I was like, oh, these are so cheap. You can't get a quality reel for that cheap. And then I started using them and man, I have just loved them. They outperform their price by a huge margin, and they are just an awesome reel, especially for the price. So those are the rods and reels that I use throughout the summer. You're not going to find a better quality setup for this price point, I guarantee it. And another huge bonus for the rods, if you're looking to get an extra 10% off these rods, you can use code TJ10, and I'll put all this in the description down below as well, along with links to all of these products, all these rods, all these reels. So if they're not already at a good enough price point, that will just add a little bit extra to save you a little bit of money. So go ahead and check out that link below and that code below. And also for Piscifun, if you use code TJE10, you will also get 10% off your purchase. So go ahead, take advantage of those. And if you haven't been able to try these out, let me know, how are you liking them? What are some of the things that you've experienced with these rods or reels? I know a lot of the feedback that I've gotten already from people that have tried these out has been nothing short of great. And I just anticipate that that's going to be your experience as well. So make sure you go to those websites, check those out, use that code, get you an extra 10% off. And again, I always appreciate the support. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.